Alright, hello everyone. Welcome to the second lecture of the Pro Lego Pro Engineer Creo Elements Pro video tutorial series. So in our last lecture, we just went over the basics of creating our first part, looked into the sketcher and extrude options, and in this lecture we'll go over how to modify existing parts, namely the part that we just created. So first thing we need to do is open up our part. If that's already. And next thing we want to do is save a copy of this part, because we want to edit this part right now. Save a copy. So we have our model name, which is what our part name is. We have our new name, which is the part that we'll be creating. So we'll call this plate 2x2. So we'll be creating a 2x2 plate from our 1x1 plate. Press OK. The next thing we want to do is go to Window, Close. So to close out our part and open up the new part. You can see it's basically the exact same part as the one we just closed. The features are all the same. So before we start, I just want to show you another option that we have inside of the model tree. So as you notice, we have sort of our sketch enumeration. So we have sketch 1, sketch 2, sketch 3. But these aren't very descriptive in terms of what they actually are, what they mean to us in the model. So what we can do, we can right click, we go to rename. So you can see, our first sketch is the outline of the part. So we name this outline. You'll see we can step the names of the features inside of the model tree. So let's go ahead and take the time to rename some of these features. So we'll say outline extrude. Let's say stud outline. Call this just stud. Actually, we'll name this to brick. It's a little more descriptive. Call this cut. Cut outline. Call this cut. And our hole will just be, I guess we can just call this stud hole. So I'll say stud hole. So the importance, I guess, of naming some of your features later on, if you have larger model trees and you need to select, or you're selecting sort of features that you want to know what they are. So for instance, if we select the stud, we can see that it highlights the stud. If we select the brick, we can see that it highlights the brick. So those are important just to see what you're actually selecting. If you have a name associated with what you're selecting, instead of just a sort of a generic description of what it is, like if it's an extrusion or a sketch, we can more easily see what we're working with. But so that's done with, we can work at modifying our part here. So as I said, we want to create a 2x2 brick, or 2x2 plate. So starting out by modifying the outline. So we do right click. So you see we have edit, dynamic edit, and edit definition. And also, I guess, edit references, but the two we're working with is be edit, or dynamic edit, and edit definition. So start with dynamic edit, click this. You'll see we have the dimensions that we have drawn inside of the sketch that are available to us to modify. So we have our length, our part, which is 1 Lego unit, 0.8065. Now if we want a 2x2 part, we can simply we type in 2 times 0.8065, hit enter. So now we have a relation that's driving this dimension, namely 2 times our Lego unit. And we have a 2 Lego unit by 2 Lego unit part that we just created. albeit the circle, the stud, is still in the center and has not moved with respect to the edges here. Now if you recall, let's click outside, Control G, regenerate. So if you recall from our last part, we set the stud to be in the center of these axes. So therefore, when we modify the parts or the features before that, this won't change. The placement of the stud won't change. So what we have to do is, because we can't really edit this, we can't use a dynamic edit, you go to set outline, you can do an edit definition, which will bring us back into the sketch mode, and we can now add more features to draw other parts or other features on this sketch, or if we want to change dimensions or add dimensions. So we want this to be in the top left-hand corner. So we'll click our dimension, we'll click the horizontal axis, and we'll click the center, and then we'll little mouse click. Okay, so now our Resolve Sketch window comes up. So this Resolve Sketch window indicates that we have conflicting dimensions in our part, meaning that because we set a constraint that we can't really break by adding a dimension. We either have a dimension or we have a constraint, but not both. So we can choose which one we want to get rid of. We click point on entity. We can click delete. So now our dimension is open for us to modify. Which we'll leave for now. So we'll leave that at 0. And we can do the same by clicking the vertical axis and clicking the center. We'll create another dimension and then get rid of the constraint. So now we're free to move the circle. We have our references set as the top and the left, or the left of the vertical and the top of the horizontal axes. So now, so we've looked into modifying these dimensions and using relations. But now if we want to set up our own relations, we can do that by actually adding our own variables to our relations. So we can go to Tools, Relations. This opens up the Relations Manager for a sketch. So just to show you quickly, we can add, because we have our Lego unit, which is 0.8065. We want to create our own variable, let's say LU, and then we'll add a comment, so /*, so say Lego unit. Let's click OK. So we double click on this dimension. We want this to be, say, LU divided by 2. Click Enter. So now we have our same window that appears, although not in the window that I'm looking at. Just asking, do we want to add this relation as LU divided by 2? So we'll click Yes. Do the same here. Say LU divided by 2. Enter, Enter. So now the circle is centered with respect to the second quadrant of this graph here, or this layout. If we wanted to, we can go back to our Tools, Relations, and check that not only is our relation still there, but also the two relations that we just set up are now also within the Relations Manager. So that'll suffice for now. So we'll click OK. We'll click the check mark. So now, when we circle the drawing around, we can see that our stud is in the top left-hand corner, and also our hole is also in the top left-hand corner. And the reason for that is, if you recall, when we set up our placement of the hole, we set that up with respect to this datum axis A1. So therefore, when this axis moves, the hole will also move. and it's also constrained to the bottom plane, which doesn't move at all. So we're pretty much set in that respect. And we just want to pattern this. We're going to create, we're going to have 4 studs instead of only having 1. And instead of actually having to create 3 more drawings, or create 3 more holes afterwards, we will take this and pattern this feature. So if we go to stud, we can right-click. You'll see an option for pattern. The option is also available on the right side tool strip. To the very bottom here we have pattern. If we go to pattern, and you'll see we have our toolbar come up at the top here. So we'll set this, so we want to click on direction. So direction creates a pattern in up to 2 directions. So we can have, say, just for one direction, if we click on the right axis, or the right datum plane, you'll see we have this sort of node come up. We can change, we can set, so you can see we have these 2 sort of black nodes which indicate where the feature is being placed. We can click on or off. So if we click off, then that feature it'll be suppressed within the program, so it won't be displayed. If we click on, it's black, then the feature is being placed there. Now we can also set the number of features that we're creating. So if we set 3, let's say, you'll see we have another dot out here. Let's back to 2 here. And the set in now, because we want to have 4 of these, which basically involves sort of mirroring this across this axis. We click here to add item. We click the front datum plane. You'll see we have another set, which is basically we have our row and our column and row sort of set up. We can set individually what the spacing is. But in our case, we want this to be the same. So now, if you recall, we set up our relation in the stud outline sketch. So if we type in, say, LU, hit enter. So we'll have the same box asking us if we want to add a feature relation. So click enter. So now you'll see that in our row length direction we have, so our checkbox, so our box now is sort of X'd out, meaning that we can't modify that because it's relation driven. But you'll see that our length now appears to be 1 Lego unit, which it is. We'll do the same here. Say LU, enter, enter. So now we have our pattern set up. Now, you notice that we're able to use our relation variable in this feature, even though we created it in the stud outline sketch. And the reason is that relations can be used from, user-defined relations can be used from previous features within the model tree. So, for instance, if we wanted to use the LU relation further down the line, we could. If we wanted to go back to, let's say, the outline and change that to, say, 2LU, we couldn't, because the relation is only set up after this sketch, or after this feature is created. So there's kind of a scope of relations in that respect. But for now, we'll just click the check mark. So we're done with that. We look at the bottom again. So you see our hole now needs to be patterned. So please right click, pattern. So now you'll see that we've filled in, the pattern is now reference driven, meaning that because we have our reference from the A1 axis, it's now patterning across all the axes that were created in the previous pattern. So, and we can also change this to, let's say if we wanted to do direction, we can do the same thing as we did before. Although, because we have a reference set up already, we just come back to reference and it fills it in for us. So there's not really much we have to do after that. So just click the check mark. Okay, so we have what looks like a 2x2 plate. Here's however one more feature that we need to create. So we'll click on Sketch. So we'll click on the bottom plane here, or the center plane where the holes are first visible. Click Sketch. So we want to create a circle in the center, which represents kind of the piece that sort of latches onto or I guess creates friction between the Lego studs. So if you turn over any 2x2 Lego part, you'll be able to see this. So what we'll do is we'll draw an arbitrary circle, just place these, this is with respect to the sides here. We'll type in LU, enter, enter. So now you'll notice that I'm not actually constraining this to the center anymore, which is not really what we want. Or I guess either way works, but we'll see we have, so that's at the center, but it's not constrained to the center. So we can, if we want to, we can modify through the relations these values. So now the size of the circle, let me just check something real quick. So we can use the reset orientation, or the Control D, to go back to our default orientation for sketching. So we can see we can move the sketch around. If we want to get back to our regular sketch plane, we can click on the sketch orientation button, which will send us back. So now we want the circle to be tangent with respect to, say, one of these studs here. So we can do that by going under constraints. Now there's a circle with a line next to it, which is the tangent constraint. So we'll click this circle. You'll see the edge here will highlight. So we click this edge here. Now you'll see we have a reference circle that's been created from our reference surface that is tangent with the circle that we're creating. So that's basically it for now. We just click check to extrude. So now we want this extrusion to be at the same height as or the same depth as the bottom of this part. So instead of having to manually type in what the dimension should be, we can use the features that are in the part. We can go to, that's the very last option in this drop-down menu, extrude the selected point, curve, plane, or surface. So we're extruding the perpendicular to the surface. So if we click the surface here, you'll see now this is set up as a reference, and we have our extrusion at the correct height, at the correct depth. And just click OK. So it's almost there. We just need to have the sort of hole in the center. So go back to hole, click on the surface, and of course we could have also done this with creating a second circle in the center, but just to show that not only with that we can use the extruded surface not only with extrusions but also with holes. So if we control click and say set this as 0.478. Enter, and then under these options, click the same button, and let's say Control click. So now we have our hole being created at the same depth as the extrusion. Just click check. Okay, so that's basically right now our 2x2 Lego plate. Control D. Of course, now we're done. Just going to make sure we want to save this. So we'll just type Control S. So save in the directory that we created it. Okay. So that's basically it. So that's our 2x2 plate that we've created from our 1x1 plate. So now you'll see that the good thing about Legos is that you can create or that the features are similar from part to part. So if we wanted to create, say, a 4x4 or a 4x2 Lego plate, we can do that easily just by modifying, say, like a base, like a 1x1 plate or something that has similar features. So that concludes this tutorial. And again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.